Hi everyone, and welcome to the first webinar of the 2016-2017 SchoolFinder webinar series. I'm your host, Chris Kerr, and I work at SchoolFinder. I'm joined today by Barb Swanson of Barb Swanson Educational Services. First, I'd like to mention that you're able to ask myself and Barb questions at any time during this webinar, and we'll be happy to answer them during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You can do this via the Questions tab in the GoToWebinar program. And now we'll start off with Barb.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. My name is Barb, as Chris has told you, and I thought I'd start by just telling you a few things about myself so you know who is speaking. I've been a guidance counselor in Toronto, Canada, both in the public and private school systems for about 25 years, well, in fact, more than 25 years. I've also had the pleasure of being the Director of University Admissions and Guidance at Neuchâtel Junior College, which is a Canadian school in Switzerland. I also work for a gap year organization. So after I finished those things and retired, I decided to start my own business. And I enjoy helping students and their parents navigate the process of post-secondary. And there's lots of decisions in that, so with my experience, I find it's just something I like to do and hopefully am helpful for the people who work with me. Former students of mine have studied all across Canada, across the USA, across the UK, and indeed Australia. I'm happy to join SchoolFinder today to talk about the search for schools, which of course more specifically is the search for colleges and universities. This whole process can be a daunting experience, but I hope today's information will help you begin your journey of exploration. And I must say that I believe there's no such thing as the best school or the best program. It's all about the fit for a student, and that's what makes it the best. Each of us learns differently, is comfortable in different environments, and has different priorities. The research and decisions you make must be based on you, and the results will be more successful if you keep this in mind. This is why it's so important to know yourself, gather information about programs and institutions, and see which is the right match for you. So let's get started. Okay, so this is what I plan to cover this evening. You've already heard the little introduction, and I'm going to talk a little bit about self-awareness, career awareness, institution awareness, the criteria for making the decisions moving forward, a little bit about the application process, and then address any questions that have come up along the way. So really, when you're starting this whole process, there's three basic questions you need to be asking yourself. Who am I? Where am I going? And how am I going to get there? And this is rarely a straight line, and detours make you interesting and make your life interesting. I must add, there are really no dead ends, because those detours that's what makes you quite interesting. So let's start with the self-awareness. You'll see on the list here a whole bunch of things, but abilities really is the first one that you have to consider. Your abilities, that can be in your mathematical ability, your communication ability getting along with people, talents you have. You may have certain areas that you're better than the average person, and we all build those abilities and talents over the course of a lifetime. You also, of course, must consider your interests. What fires you up? What do you like? What makes life interesting for you and you would be happy to work at and study at for a number of years? Values is something that we all may have different viewpoints. And so your values, looking back on building all these things, coming together, what's important for you? What do you think is the thing to make special in your life? Do you value working with people? Do you value earning a lot of money? Do you value doing something you really enjoy all the time? Of course, your personality is another area to consider. Some people are extroverts. Other people are introverts. Some people like being in charge. Other people like working on a team. So all those aspects must be taken into consideration. Priorities really combine all of these things. So you go back and you think about what's important to me right now. Am I perhaps at 24 wanting to travel a lot and earn a lot of money? But by 34, maybe you want to settle down, have a family, and the travel is not quite so exciting for you. So we weigh these things in our decisions, and it's a series of decisions. It's not one thing that lasts for the rest of your life. Your priorities change over time, as do your values sometimes, or your interests. The final point about your self-awareness is I think you have to also be very aware of blind spots. Now that's a very polite way of saying your weaknesses. So your weaknesses are things that you can work around, perhaps not necessarily avoid, but you learn not to dwell on the things that are your weaknesses. Combine with other people who can fill in the place where you have weaknesses and dwell on your talents and abilities. So all those things become part of your little portfolio of who you are. How do we discover them, or how do we know these things? Well, of course, if you're in school, report cards and feedback that you get on a regular basis will tell you about your abilities in certain subjects. You'll know whether you're good at studying science or English or phys ed. Successes you might have had along the way. Maybe you were on a school team and were most valuable player of the team. That's a talent that you have. Or you were in charge of a club or leader of student council. All those things make up who you are and the types of talents that you have. Your parents, your teachers, your guidance counselors, and even your friends, they all give you feedback all the time, and hopefully they are being honest with you of what your real talents are. Your extracurricular activities often indicates what you like to do, builds upon your interests. Some of you have had part-time jobs or have worked at camps or done volunteer work, and all those experiences also contribute to you understanding what you like to do. So do you like working with kids? Or maybe you dislike working with little kids. Maybe you enjoy being with seniors. Maybe you like working outdoors. Maybe you prefer to be working with data and information and not with people. So all these pieces have to come together to make you understand who you are and what you're going to be happy in. If you can talk openly to your parents and to your teachers and your guidance counselors, I think it's a really good idea to talk about those weaknesses because we all have them, and it's just something that you can then learn to compensate for as you move forward. The career awareness piece is something else that I don't want to necessarily dwell on when you're starting your college and university. I know there are some people who are very focused. Often kids know, I want to be a doctor, and they have this dream and they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. But the great majority of people don't know what they want to be. And so university or college can be a wonderful time to explore different courses, perhaps things you've never even heard of before. Someone once said that university was explore your passion, or find your passion. And I think by that they want you to try different subjects and find things that really get you going, that you really are excited about going to the class or excited about getting into a conversation about. Those are the things that you should try and take note of. And I have to say, it's not just one decision. It's a series of decisions. It's a lifelong journey, and what you're deciding at 18 or 24 or 30 or 40, it's constantly evolving. And so it's not just one decision and then off you go forever in that direction. There are very few dead ends. As we mentioned earlier, those detours make life interesting. Sometimes expensive, but at least they can be interesting. Summer and part-time jobs are a great way to find out about things you like to do. So ask questions of the people there. Ask them what they like about the job. What do they not like about the job? If you could do it again, what would you do differently? If I want to do this full-time, what should I do in college that will prepare me for this job? What do you know now that you wish you knew then? And if you keep asking those questions of people you work with, of parents, of your friends, of aunts and uncles, I think you will put together in your mind a really good knowledge base of some interesting careers and directions. Some schools will offer co-op, some high schools will offer co-op or internships and taking a gap year. All are unique opportunities to try and find out more about the world of work. And I think if you have the opportunity to do any of these things, it really is a wonderful way to learn a different perspective on life. I'm a real supporter of a gap year concept. It's very big in many parts of the world, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to get away, see your country from afar, maybe perhaps volunteer somewhere in the world, and it gives you an idea of what life is like outside of the bubble you've grown up in. Job shadowing is another opportunity. Maybe ask an aunt or uncle if you could go to work with them one day and see what happens. And again, ask all those questions. In addition, for career awareness, there are many tests available to help narrow the field. In fact, on the SchoolFinder website, there is a career quiz, and that might be a good place to start to just try and narrow down general areas that you want. That also is an area that in my private practice I do a lot with students, is interest and personality and temperament tests to just see what might be a possible match. And remember, what you learn in one place, what you may learn at camp as a camp counselor, those are skills that you then can transfer into a job environment. So don't feel you have to be studying exactly what you want to be or the career you want to end up in, because what you're learning along the way in college and in university, those skills will transfer. You learn how to research. You learn how to write properly. You learn how to communicate with people. It doesn't really necessarily matter what the subject is. It's the skills you're building. Okay, so we have self-awareness you've started. You've started looking at some career awareness to build your portfolio of understanding. And another step you have to take is the institution awareness. So you have to find out what's out there. Where is it possible that I could go? What's going to appeal to me? And so you gather information. We're going to talk in a minute about some of the resources to gather that information. But of course, you can go on the website and you can visit these places. You need to learn some terminology. And by that, I mean, know what an undergraduate means. What subjects are included in a Bachelor of Arts? Compare that to a subject that is, what subjects are in Bachelor of Science? What does a major mean? What are compulsory subjects as opposed to optional subjects? So as you start your research, you may come across some of these words, and if you have an understanding of them, that will make your research much more effective and easier. The other thing you can do if you're in Canada, you can information sessions. And these happen both in schools and in the community. So very often you will see, for example, the Atlantic universities will travel as a group of 10 or 15 representatives from the Atlantic East Coast of Canada schools, and they will go across the major cities across the country. Ontario hosts a very big fair at the end of September every year called the Ontario University Fair. And I know in British Columbia there are similar sort of gatherings of large groups of universities. There's also international fairs, Go and Study Abroad, and the one that's happening this weekend in Toronto is another international Go Study Abroad fair. So they are listed on the SchoolFinder website, and so that's a really good resource to find out events. You look under the events category. You can also never underestimate getting on campus too. So get to one or two campuses, even if it's not one you think you'll end up in. It will give you a point of reference. And so you can go and wander around, see what the atmosphere is like. So then when you do get to one that is one within the range that you think you might be able to go to, you'll have a much better idea of how it matches up with the others. So it's really, really important, if you can, is to get to various campuses. You'll understand the location, you'll understand the feel, and those are important things. Once again, asking questions, your friends and relatives are a great resource in finding out about institutions. And of course, use the resources. So how do you make the decision though? You've got all this information now put together, you know a little bit about yourself, you've got some ideas about career direction, you've visited a few campuses, so you have a feel of what they're about. How are you going to make this decision? So really what you have to do is set the criteria of what is important to you. And we're going to see that list in just a sec. So set your criteria, then you look at that list and you prioritize it. What's really important to me? Is it more important to be close to home, or is it more important to have the exact program I want, which allows co-op? So research that type of thing. Come up with a short list, like what are your alternatives, maybe 5 or 6 schools that look appropriate for you, and go into each one a little bit more closely and evaluate the good pros and the cons. You might really want to go to the school on the other side of the country, but then that's a huge travel expense. So that might become a con, whereas the pro is you really like staying in another part of Canada. So it's like constant weighing back and forth of what's good and what's a challenge. When you actually decide, it's always really a good idea to what I would call a stretch school. Pick 1 or 2 that you think are just at your reach or a little beyond your reach. If you do your absolute best performance, you might be able to get in there. And then maybe 2 or 3 reasonable or sort of the range that you're normally in when you look at the marks. And then definitely a safety school. 1 or 2 that you know with your average coming out of your grade 11 junior year that you would be able to get into this school A or B. And if you do that, then you're going to have a happier result to your offers. Here are some of the criteria I was just mentioning. So of course you want to find ones with the program that you like. The program can be very general, something like Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science, or it may be very specific. Engineering, Bachelor of Science in Chemistry with Mathematics. There's such a huge range of programs in this country. And so you need to narrow it down a bit, but don't be afraid if you don't have it narrowed down to the absolute very specific thing. Because as I said earlier, many people go in with a broad idea of what they want and then explore at university and narrow it down. The location is a really big thing for many kids. Some people want to stay close to home so you can get home and celebrate a family birthday, and other people want exactly the opposite. They want to stay away from home, and parents can't just drop in. No drop-in ability. They have to phone first because it's just far enough away that they wouldn't risk that you might not be home. And as I said earlier, the further away you are, you may have travel expenses, which of course have to be considered into this whole equation. The size of the campus and the feel of the campus are really, really important. The size of the town and the population of the campus are things to consider. Some people want a big university, other people like one. My advice at this point would be, whichever you think you have, be sure to keep an open mind to the other. There will often be people who say, oh, I want a city experience, I'm a city girl. But, you know, it may be the only 3 or 4 years you have a chance to be in a small little rural campus where everyone's in the same place and everyone's really involved and it's kind of a little utopia. So be sure to look at that factor very carefully. And when you are visiting that campus, you will get a feel of whether this is a place I think I'd like to spend the next 3 or 4 years. Check out the facilities. Some schools have fantastic sports facilities with pools and squash courts and dance studios, and others are much more simple. So what's important to you, and make sure that it matches what you think is important. Residences is another huge area to be aware of. Most schools in Canada will guarantee residence for first-year students if you apply on time and put your deposit down. So watch very carefully of how the universities you are interested in handle residence. And the final thing I think you need to keep an eye on are unique features. So many schools might have co-op or internships or study abroad, but others might have very specialty programs where you study in a group of 25 students in first year for 2 of your courses, or a program that's a collaborative program between college and university, or programs that you take some courses, I guess this would be the collaborative. You might do studio work at a college and the academic theoretical work at the university. So there's a wide range of unique things that you should try and find out about, because they're the things that sometimes make a program and an experience very special. So here are some of the resources that I think are, if you cover even half of these, you've done well. Of course, the internet is a big one for everybody. You can search the websites of institutions. There's lots of search engines that will help you if you type in, I want to study kinesiology, and it will tell you programs across the country or in whatever country you want to go to where you can offer it. Again, SchoolFinder does have that sort of search engine on the site. You also can get calendars. So every university has a calendar. In Canada we call them calendars, the US call them catalogs, and the British and Australians call them prospectus. And what those books are is a list of all the courses you can study at that university. So they don't hand those out freely because they're bulky and they're boring and they're kind of heavy, but all that information is online. So you may see it listed as course calendar, or it may say list of all programs, but it is somewhere where you can look beyond first year and see what else is being offered. What they do give you usually are things called view books. And if you attend any of the fairs or you have a rep come to your school, that's what they will probably give you. And it's a glossy, lots of pictures, tells you the programs you can apply into, tells you about residence, and all the basic information a person going into first year university would need to know. There also exist reference books, and these might be things like a book on all the universities in Canada, or it might be a book on sports scholarships in the United States, or it might be ranking of the UK schools. Tons of reference books. And one place I often find those books, guidance offices have some, but also bookstores on a campus. So if you go to your local campus into a bookstore, just go look along their educational reference books, and you will see how to get into medical school, how to get into grad school, tons of them. So here are some on-site references now. So electronic info, sometimes called e-info, that's put out by the Ontario universities. So Ontario has tons of universities, over 20 universities, and they have this website you can use as a search engine. You can find out lots of information on it. Similar one for the colleges is ontariocolleges.ca, where you can find out programs at all the colleges in Ontario. There's tons of those. SchoolFinder, which is sponsoring this webinar, also has a lot of information on the website. You have a dashboard where you can keep track of your own information. There are career tests, there are events listed, there's information about lots of different universities. So it's a really good resource. Scholarships Canada, we aren't even really talking about financial need on this one, but that site tells you about scholarships across the country. Many scholarships are automatically, they're offered automatically to Canadian citizens, and based on your entrance average, there are lots of scholarships. But then again, there are hundreds more that are very specialized scholarships, and some of them you have to apply for. So that website will help you with that. For Grads Only is a publication that on paper gives you charts that you can look up kinesiology, and it tells you all the universities across the country that offer it. And then it also has lists of the universities, the requirements for each course, recommended courses, and the average that was required last year to get into that course. There's also a section on timelines, on residents, and all the contacts at, this is a university document, all universities across Canada. Social media is more and more useful for researching colleges and universities. They all have Facebook, they have Twitter accounts, and sometimes you can communicate with them that way. You can set up tours, you can ask questions of their staff. So social media has a really big part nowadays. And finally, something that we mentioned earlier, if you're not really sure what you want to study, then you can do things like interest, personality, and temperament tests. And those sort of tests, there's some on the website, such as SchoolFinder, but that's also the sort of thing that a company such as mine can help you with. And we can work through helping you channel some of your focus your interests without choosing a very specific final end, just get you channeling in the right direction. If you plan to study colleges in Ontario, these are 1 to 4 year programs. They offer certificates, degrees, and diplomas. So some of them, there's hundreds and thousands actually of courses. And so you can go online, there's a website on there, the information at ontariocolleges.ca, you will see the thousands of courses that are offered. There are collaborative programs that work with universities, but they also have transfer to university programs. So it's a really interesting way to work out your educational plan. Some people also start at university, might get a degree, for example, in something like fine arts, and then they would go to a college to study something specific, like photography. So there's no one way to do the direction. You could do college, then university. You could do only college. You could do only university. Or you could do university, then college. So lots of options. The colleges tend to be more hands-on practical and project-based, not as academic theory as you might find at university. They're also a lot cheaper. So if finances is an issue, you may want to look at colleges to get that degree you want. They do all their applications on a common website called OCAS, Ontario College Application Service, and their deadline for all colleges in Ontario is February the 1st. There also are private colleges for things like film, fashion merchandising, computers. So there's lots of ways to get that education in college. The university process in Canada, it varies from institution to institution, but usually the applications come in somewhere between October and March. With an exception, there are a few that may go later than March. A very few do early admission. It's very different from the American system where there is an actual process called early admission. It's not quite the same in Canada. But some of the schools like Acadia or St. Yves will in October look at your grade 11 marks if you apply in October and send a transcript, and if they think you're a good bet, then they would give you a conditional early admission, and then you would have to follow up obviously with a successful grade 12 year. But it does allow you to have perhaps an admission in your pocket by Christmas time of your grade 12 year, and that sometimes is a very reassuring thing. All the applications in Ontario use this one central service called Ontario University Application Centre. Some people call that OUAC, other people call it UAC, but it's the same thing. Your schools help you set it up. They give you a PIN number so you can access your account, and that's the way you enter all your choices for Ontario universities and programs. It's one cost of $150 for 3 choices, and then you can add on more at $50 per choice. It's very user-friendly, and it's on a very assigned timeline. So anyone applying to Ontario universities, the deadline is January 11th, 2017 in this year. Outside of Ontario, it's quite different because each university you apply to directly. And each university has their own fee, and each university has their own deadline. So when you're applying to University of British Columbia or Victoria or Simon Fraser on the West Coast, they will be totally different than McGill or Dalhousie or Bishops or Mount Allison. So please, for those universities, check on the website and find out their deadlines. Admissions in Canada are pretty well based on marks, and usually just your grade 12 marks. They sometimes will look back to grade 11 marks, but it's really your grade 12 marks, usually including the required courses for your program. But watch out, because sometimes there are other supplementary criteria. So for example, if you're applying to a journalism, you might have to write an essay. Or if you're applying to a fine arts program or a design program, you might have to submit a portfolio. Or for music or drama, you might have to do an audition. And now, quite a few universities are asking you to do a questionnaire. Sometimes it's optional, and sometimes it's compulsory. And that questionnaire allows you a little more space to tell a little bit more than just your marks. So you're telling about your extracurricular, your volunteer work, your leadership, and other things about yourself. So although the marks are still the main criteria, those other supplementary things can really be important, especially to programs like concurrent education, commerce. So check carefully for that supplementary. We don't want you to miss out on that. So some final thoughts as we wind down here. As I said at the beginning, there's no best school for something. It's all about the best fit for you. And considering all the criteria we've talked about, and location and costs and programs, everything, find the one that, or the 5 or 6 that match you and apply to those. You have to be realistic looking at your marks. You may want to go all you want to one university, but if their cutoff is always over 90%, that's not a realistic school for you if you usually only have 80%. So be realistic, keep your perspective, and definitely keep a sense of humor, because sometimes you will not be laughing, and you have to know that it's good to just keep it all in perspective. So go for it and enjoy the ride. One final fact to tell you is that many, if not most, universities will defer your acceptance. So in other words, you apply, they make an offer to you, you accept the offer, and then once you've accepted it, you say, could I please defer my acceptance for a year? And that would give you a year where you could do volunteer work or travel or make some money to help finance your education. So be sure to look into deferring for a gap year or just a year away from school. These are some of the things I can offer for you in my private practice. If anybody's interested, I can do those tests that we've talked about. I can help you narrow down your post-secondary areas of interest. I know quite a bit about things, programs in Canada, but also in the US, UK, and Australia, and helping you with all those supplementary forms we talked about. I'm happy to do proofing and editing and have some ideas about how you can enhance your application. There also are programs around the world, namely in the UK, in Scotland, England, Ireland, also in Australia, New Zealand, where you can do direct entry right into medicine, law, dentistry, or vet. So I've had quite a bit of experience with those programs and could be happy to advise you on that. Also scholarship advice. So I hope you all, in closing, I hope that today's presentation has clarified some points about what you can be doing to enhance your search for an appropriate school. I hope you'll take away a few ideas that you can put into action And I know the journey is exciting, but sometimes it's long and hard, especially when you're juggling coursework, extracurricular, part-time job, family, and social activities. It is a challenging balance, but I know you can do it. With a little planning ahead, using your time carefully, and staying calm, you will come through with flying colors, I'm sure. And don't forget, use your parents and your guidance counselors for advice and support. Have fun and good luck. Thanks, Chris.
And thank you, Barb. That was all really good information, so I hope you guys wrote down a lot of it. So I'm here, as I said before, I work for SchoolFinder. I'm here to give you a bit of a rundown of some of the features that we offer on our site that will really kind of help the search for schools be a little less of a headache for you. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold, so I apologize for that. So some of the features that we have many different tools that help narrow down the search, and they'll help you find the right school for your needs. In the next few slides, we'll go over searching the site, taking a career quiz, comparing programs and schools on the site, finding prerequisites and costs for individual schools, how to narrow down your choices, and finally, how to reach out to your choices on SchoolFinder. So we make it really easy on you guys to find any college and university in Canada with selected universities in the UK, US, Australia, and in Europe. We actually have just gotten a few in Asia into our system as well. A couple of Chinese schools have been joined SchoolFinder group. So you can narrow down your search by school or by program. Once you've entered your initial search term, you can then narrow it down even further using filters on the following pages. This includes filters like location, degree type, and school type. So you'll notice the two red arrows there. You got your two search bars, one for school, one specifically for program. Once you get through to them, so if you're looking for a school specifically in British Columbia, you can search the school bar for that, and it'll lead you in and show you every single school we have in our system in BC. The search option is simple to use, assuming you know exactly what it is you want to study and what you want for your future career. But for those of you who are unsure about your future career goals, that's why we built the career quiz. By answering a series of questions, you'll be given a percentage of how you would fit in any given career. We then give you a list of schools in all the categories, like university and college, that offer the typical courses pertaining to the career category. So it's a pretty easy to use tool. It's just a series of simple questions. It's just really basic stuff like how you do in leadership roles, if you enjoy being outdoors, like those kinds of things. And that'll help you know if you want to get into a specific category. So that can actually be accessed very easily through your dashboard. You earn a badge for doing that, which will appear on your profile as soon as you do it. And you can revisit, you can retake the quiz anytime you want. So if you have some slight changes in what you like, then don't feel bad about going back in and then changing it, because you might end up in a different career path and love it even more. So coming off of those two features, it's time to compare your options side by side. We offer a powerful tool for comparing programs in our database so you can get an at-a-glance idea of how they stack up. Maybe you really want a course that offers co-op or one that doesn't require an 80% average. You can quickly figure out which schools are right for you. So when you're searching through our database, any program, any school, all of our scholarships, you can save them, and then they'll all be quickly accessible in your dashboard. But along with that feature, you can actually go into your saved stuff and you can hit a compare button and it'll add it into this little chart. So it shows you everything in columns and in rows, so you can quickly take a look at the fact that 1 out of 3 of those schools has a co-op. So if that's what you want, that would be one of the schools you'd want to keep, and you'd want to keep on your short list. Two of the biggest things to keep a lookout for are prerequisites and costs. Some schools could offer the same course as another with less prerequisite courses needed, and some will turn out to be a much cheaper per semester. It's always best to research all of your options to make sure you find the best school for your situation. This information can be found on any program's page under the Information and Requirements section. So, for example, there's some paramedic courses in Canada that require you to have biology as well as chemistry and physics, but there's some that don't require the physics section. So if that's something that you're not very strong at, you don't need to necessarily take a grade 12 university physics course in order to be a paramedic. So like I mentioned with shortlists, the last step for you, as you progress through comparisons and narrow down your options, you should be developing a short list of schools and or programs. So like I said, you can save both schools and programs. You can see on the left side, you have your My Schools and My Programs tabs on your dashboard. So those will narrow it down. It'll put it in a list. You can add and remove them at your own pace. This is where you find your comparison options and all of that stuff. Both can be saved and quickly located on your dashboard. Once you narrow down your short list, it's time to compare again and figure out your absolute best options. So as you're comparing like 2 and 3 different schools or 4 and 5 different programs across the country, make sure once you realize one is better than other ones, you keep that saved and you remove the other ones and then just keep going. It might take you a couple hours to get through all of the different school options, but you could end up with literally your perfect option. The absolute final step for you is to request info straight from the source. So by hitting the request info button on any of the school's profiles, what that will do is it'll lead you into a quick little form that you fill out, and it'll send it straight to the university's email address. So some of our schools actually have personal email addresses attached to that, so they will personally get back in contact with you and figure out exactly what you need for going to their school, while others will be an information email address, but then you'll be added directly into their database and they'll touch base with you about open houses, big events like that to do with the school. Deadlines is a big example that they send emails for. Yeah, so they'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have for them. There's a comment section at the very bottom of the request info form, so it really is an open-ended request for information. So those are the biggest tools that we have to offer for making the search for schools as less of a headache as we possibly can for you. It's right in the name. We're here to help you find schools. So we have all the tools that you need to make it as easy as possible for you. So that's it for the SchoolFinder section. If you have any feedback or any questions regarding anything we've gone over, you can feel free to email me. That's my personal email at work. Or you can call our 1-800 number from anywhere in the world, and it'll connect you straight into our office. We'll pick up saying, hello, Edge Interactive. That's just the company that owns everything. So don't be afraid. We're now going to open up everything for a quick Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I'll give you guys a minute to ask. Otherwise, we will end the webinar.
you know, all these criteria, university campus tours, what to look for. I mean, you just can't fit it all in, right?
Yeah. So it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I guess that means we answered anything that you came here for, which
great,
is
Chris.
always good to hear. So if you guys are interested in attending more webinars, they're actually the first Wednesday of every month moving forward, with the exception of January, because we'll all be on holidays at that point. So if you ever want to find out any more information about future webinars, just go to the events section on SchoolFinder.com, scholarshipscanada.com, or studyincanada.com, depending on where you are in the world and what you're looking for. But with that said, thanks, Barb, for joining me.
My pleasure.
Have a good night, everyone.
Title of the next one?
Oh, sorry. And the title of the next webinar is the application process. So if you're interested in the different stages of applying for university and college, that'll be the webinar to attend. Good night, everyone.
Bye.